So Sujatha, if you are interested, staff have a PowerPoint presentation that we can go through that'll hit a bunch of the highlights, including questions that the committee brought up last week, or no, excuse me, last month. And we can stop at any point in time as you all want to have discussion or questions.
I'm ever so interested.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen.
May I bring up something about the minutes?
Oh, sure.
Fran?
The word overlaid is an unusual spelling in the minutes. It's on committee questions, can geographic data be overlaid? It should be L-A-I-E-D, not L-A-Y-E-D.
Okay.
Okay, that's it. It's just like
all good. So Sujatha, the first thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. So if the crew would like to approve them with Fran's friendly amendments, we'll get those posted.
So am I supposed to say something? Oh, I'm so terrible.
I so move we accept the minutes as corrected by Fran.
Second.
Okay.
Sujatha,
Sujatha, you can call for a vote.
Okay, can we have a vote on whether to approve the minutes?
Aye.
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 And I say so approved?
Yeah.
Look at me.
Good job.
Oh, and there is Liz. So perfect timing. On that.
Yay.
Hi, Liz.
Aye, sorry.
Hi, Liz. You're fine. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and it's going. There we go. So hopefully everyone can see the large format slides. So today is your second fine review committee. And just as a reminder, I put up the committee directive to look at trends, barriers to usage, assessing if elimination is appropriate, or if any changes in a fines profile would make most sense. So first off, staff wanted to make sure that we addressed the questions that you brought up at your last committee meeting. And in particular, we pulled a couple of the high level ones. Liz, you had asked if seniors could be pulled out, if that was an option. If you all were looking at children, could we also talk about removing fines for seniors? We wanted to know if the original data that staff had provided around fines and fees was for lost items, it was for random fees that were on people's cards. It wasn't just for fines, which is what you all are assessing today. So you wanted to know if staff could update that data so it was more clear. You wanted to know if we could overlay the fines into specific zip code or map areas so that you could get a better picture of where those fines are. And you wanted to know what data was available from jurisdictions that had already gone through the process of eliminating fines. So we're able to answer 3 of those 4 questions. The last one has been a little tricky. So this first one, Mr. Robert pulled this data, so I'll be happy to let him talk a little bit about this one.
Sure. So essentially, just like we were talking about, to try and see where our areas are of people having by age group the most impact from fines and fees. And for this one, I will say we did update some of the other data to remove lost and damaged items. When we talk about people being blocked, we have to include lost and damaged items because we're looking at anything. People are blocked if they owe $15 or more, so it incorporates all potential fees and fines that they owe. So just for your clarification, just to know that these blocked people are going to include lost and damaged items for this data. But here, basically, you can see across the board for anybody who has provided a birth date, that we have a birth date in the system, this is what we look like for age groups. And so for our 65 plus customers, we see that about less than 1% are blocked, 443. If we expand that downward to 55 plus, again, we get a little bit more people in there, about twice as many are blocked, about 1,000. You can see it's less than it was, I think, the last time we pulled this data. Talking to Jessica about that, a lot of that is because, we haven't had fine activity for a while because of the pandemic, and we've been purging fees that were over 2 years old. So that's down to 5%, but still the largest group impacted by blocks is anybody who's from 0 to 17 in our system. And then we have adults, which is about 3% or about almost 7,000 customers out of our 215,000 adult customers.
Perfect. Thank you, Robert. So we know that you asked specifically for information about seniors. We thought it would be helpful to have the information to show you kind of the parallels here, that if you're looking at 65 plus, that is less than 500 residents who have blocked cards. That is less than 0.1%. But for kiddos, it's 5% of the percentage of cards that we have for that age range. So it's, 2,000 folks. Liz, I see your hand up.
Yes, what's the number, the 54,561, is that users?
That's how many cards that we have in that age range. Yeah, so we have
That's the
55-ish.
total for that group then.
Yeah, we have about 55,000 card holders who are 65 plus. And then if you go down, you can see we have 96,000 card holders who are 55 plus. So they're not going to all add up to the right amount because there's some overlap there, but that's about where we're at. Yeah.
Okay, and what is the time frame for when we talk about this, the state is good for 3 years ago to now, 5 years ago to now?
So
Last
Robert,
last year?
if I'm remembering correctly, you pulled this data in mid-May. So that was.
Yeah, so this is pretty fresh from mid-May. And then I think the previous data that we had, I might have been about 2018, Jess, that we had referred to earlier.
Yes, so Liz, this data is about 3 weeks out at this point, but it's fairly accurate and it's a point in time data.
Exactly.
We don't have specific moments where we go through and we dump out cards that are no longer in use or that have blocked. It's a rolling process.
Okay, and then I'd like to just mention that the only reason I brought up seniors as a question mark in the beginning is some of the literature that Jessica, you sent to us.
Yes.
Some of the library systems did break out seniors and children from the fees. So I just thought it would be an interesting thing to see if that's an issue in Fairfax County, but because some of the other library systems in the country did separate out seniors from not getting fines as well, but I
Absolutely agree.
didn't have
And we hadn't thought to look at that either, but it was fascinating to see the disparity between them. That's if you're over 65 and you have an active library card, there is very little possibility in here that you have a blocked account. But if you are under 17 and have an active card, well, that jumps by 5%.
Right. So if we're saying politically, we don't think that eliminating all fines would be acceptable at this point in the political climate that we're in, then maybe just the children is something that is achievable. But if we can't go for the whole, all of it, but yeah, the impact on the children would be most definitely something that we care about.
And this, of course, does not include our LEAP cards, the library equity access passes that we have for all FCPS students, because those don't get fines. Suzanne?
Yeah, it just occurred to me that a lot of the adult customers are checking out the books for their children.
They certainly do.
Yeah.
Many of the books checked out under the adult category, I'm guessing, are children's books, probably what, 20-30%?
I don't know that we pulled that data specifically. This is
It'd be
just
hard
based
to
on the
do.
registered age of the cardholder.
Yeah.
I mean, we could do, if we're interested in that, Jessica, I think we could do like another point in time, probably more of a snapshot than historical, but we could certainly see at any given time what
How many
audience.
adults have children's books?
Exactly. I think we
checked to
could
them, yeah.
certainly look at that if we wanted to.
How easy is it to look at that, Robert?
Um,
I mean, it sounds like it's a little complicated.
it's a little work. It
I mean,
would
it
be.
feels like it's a little work. Just imagine you'd have to go into the people and then look at and then make a value judgment about.
Yeah, I would suggest holding off on that until you
Yeah.
get to the end of the presentation, because I think you'll have some news at the tail end that may make you pleased and may not need that additional data set for this.
It sounds like it's a manual process.
Yes. And Robert, unfortunately, is a one-man shop right now. So as amazing as he is, his time is very, very discreetly categorized with specific projects right now. Fran?
I wanted to reiterate the point that Suzanne raised, because I think, from 0 to 5 or 6, it's going to be, somebody who's 18 to 54, who's responsible. And it goes to the issue that was raised of our being an institution to teach responsibility. And for kids that age, well, it's not really in our goals and objectives that we teach community members responsibility. And B, for that age group, you know, it's a moot point.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you know, good.
We'll move on to the next slide. So you all had asked for some updated historical data with trends as to which direction the overdue fee revenue was heading in. So Robert was able to refine that information and pull out lost and damaged items. So the actual payments that you would make for something that you can no longer return to the library. And you can still see that the trend is strongly downward, that a decade ago, we were pulling in $1.3 million. And then if you stop at fiscal year 19, which is the best one we can get to pre-pandemic, it's about 670,000. So that's half of what we used to take in for fine revenue. Part of that is the increasing utilization of digital materials, which do not accrue overdue fines. Part of that, as we will see continuing, is that we offer automatic renewals now, which would have happened towards the end of fiscal year 19. And then these last 2 years obviously have been just kind of funky as we have been in the pandemic. So this is just a little update per the request from the board.
Can I just insert just one thing here?
course.
Just something for us to remember. The auto renew, like if you make an sort of a moral argument about we're supposed to be teaching, you know, Phil Rosenthal's argument regarding this, right? If you look at that,
My
the
meeting.
auto renewal concept is like, that is right by itself, sort of mitigating some of that quote unquote, our responsibility to teach responsibility, right? We're auto renewing for you is like giving you quote unquote a pass if you were to look at it like that, which
Yeah.
I don't look at it like that. But if you were to think about that, so that's just something as part of the argument for us to say, when we made the determination to auto renew, that look what it did to fees. So it's like, you know, obviously our tax money pays for our libraries. So we're just like, it's an extra tax that we're doing with these fees. And when you auto renew, you're sort of morally taking some of the onus of that responsibility off of people, I think.
Suzanne?
Do we have any numbers on or percentages of how many of our users do not communicate with us by email?
Yes, we are basically at upwards of I think 96.5 to 97% of email usage. So it is huge. And I'll just throw in auto renewal. From what we've seen, about 83% of items are auto renewed. So the only thing that really is generally not auto renewed is anything that's hit its renewal limit, which is 3 renewals at this point, or anything that has active holds and we don't have anything on the shelf to fill them.
And
So
the 2-week books, the 14-day books?
those do not renew at all.
Right.
Yeah. So
But I do think if 95% of our users are getting those self-renewal emails regularly, that's a really good reminder that you have books, and maybe, you know, the ones that you can't renew, there usually holds on. So you better get your tail over and bring them back.
Yeah, and the notification that's provided on those is pretty clear, because you get the block at the top, which are the things that won't renew. And it says that very clearly, these could not renew for whatever reason. So it's not hidden information. It's your opportunity to look at that and go, uh-oh, I should really bring that back. Somebody else wants to use that.
And I'm wondering how the 2-week books will fit in. Should we do away with fines? Do we do away with 2-week books?
Gosh, I don't think so, because the goal with those 2-week books is to, some of it is to offer quick picks so that people can have something that's a surprise when they come into a branch.
Yeah.
But the other part of it is to help diminish our hold lines, because it's often folks that are waiting in a really long queue. We offer like the quick picks for both, we have the quick picks for both physical and digital materials. And they're a lovely resource, but they already don't charge fines. So I don't know that that would change the utilization of those.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so this is just a snapshot. We thought you all might like to see as of mid-May, exactly how much we have for fiscal year 21, and then what we had going on in fiscal year 20, as well as what's unpaid right now. And the bottom part is probably the most interesting part for this discussion. So as of 3-ish weeks ago, the material audience, so to your question earlier about the age of people versus where the items are directed towards, $145,000 of fines owed on children's materials, not children's cards,
Okay.
plus 25-ish thousand on teen, and then 116 on adults. So out there at that moment in time was about $285,000 of outstanding fines for patrons. And most of those are for kids and youth stuff. So while the earlier data we presented was about the age of the person who held the card, this gives you a little bit of a corollary so you can see the type of stuff that's accruing fines. I can speak for myself personally. I'm checking out board books on my account now, and you can check out a lot of those things very, very quickly. And they manage to hide themselves in your home in ways you never expected. So it is definitely a thing. We anecdotally, if you are a parent using a library system with a couple of kids, you're checking out just stacks of picture books and board books and JPs and J readers, because this is such a wonderful resource you're already paying with for your taxes. And it is very easy to miss a due date or to misplace an item. So it certainly can be the combo. It's both the kids' cards themselves that are blocked, and there's a lot of fines that are on kids' materials. Robert, you pulled this data as well. Is there anything else you'd like to highlight on the slide?
Yeah, I was just saying, I mean, I think when we had done this before for you all, it did include lost and damaged items. So again, this is really just to highlight that this is stripped of lost and damaged charges. This is strictly overdue fees, just so you can see a real apples to apples comparison here. And I think, you know, from working in the branches, you definitely see that, you know, a parent might start with just getting a kid a card because the parent may not be a borrower. The kid could quickly get into a block situation because, you know, they're checking out the books for the kids and they don't get in to return them. So they create a card for themselves or vice versa. So we definitely see that crossover from one card to the next, depending on what happens. And if you can't pay the block card on the kid's card, you create a block, you know, you create a card for the parent and just try to, you know, at some degree to outrun it, I guess, based on your ability to get in and everything.
Yeah. So I believe I'm going to minimize this particular PowerPoint and open up another one, because we knew how much you all just love PowerPoints and you want more of them in your lives. So one of the questions that came up was, can we overlay blocked cards on a map? This particular slide is not very helpful for you all because it's everywhere, but you'll see it's going to refine as we go down. And this data was pulled by our wonderful Doug Miller, our strategic planning and customer data manager. So this is just all the cards, and you can see the bigger size circles are where there are more blocked cards. The smaller size circles are where there are less. And really, this just looks like where the cicadas are right now. So you can just ignore this and we are going to move forward. So
Does
this is
the colors mean anything?
I
think it's age groups. I believe it's age groups. So this is the same. This is using the same data that we were looking at a couple of slides ago, but this is down to the person. So when we were looking at that percentage data of X% of adults have block cards, this is every single user down to their address. And Doug put it across. And Doug did want me to mention, he just mentioned to me, he is working on a heat map that might give us a little bit better view than kind of what the data map that Jess was talking about. But yeah, each of those dots should correspond to an age range, I believe.
Yes. And I'll pull up, there's a document that goes along with this that'll give us a little bit more information, and it may have the key. I probably should have swapped these, but this was just so interesting. I wanted to start here. So this is, you can see up in the top right corner, all blocked cards, and cards are blocked if they owe more than $15. Okay. So if we go to the next slide, these are your blocked accounts from ages 18 to 24, still kind of all over the place. 25 to 34, 35, and there's the color. So you can see the color range changing. 35 to 44, 45 to 54, 55 to 60. You can see it's starting to diminish a little bit the higher you get in the age range, 65 plus. And then we're going to jump in a little bit further. Little tiny dots for little tiny kids. So this is the fine one. I missed that earlier. So these are folks that have $15 to $25 on their accounts.
And they're blocked.
And they're blocked. Yeah, anything over 15 is blocked. So that was the first range. This is 25 to 49, 50 to 99, 100 to 199, And you're gonna start seeing where you get the blocks for much more in fines on account. So this is typically lost items, 200 to almost 300, 300 to 400, and 400 to 500. And then there's over that. But you can kind of start to see some patterns in the pictures here as you get higher in the amount of blocked cards. You can see along Route 1, you can see up in Herndon, you can see Centerville, you can see around the airport. I'm not quite certain where the little orange in the top kind of right is, but these certainly start aligning with some of the
Like
areas.
my
where-
house, that little orange is like
That's
up where
this
I
guy up
live.
here. This one, this is the
No,
one I was
not
thinking
that
of.
one. This
This one.
that one. That one
There
is
you
sort of
go.
where
Okay, you're gonna have to go talk to your neighbors because they owe us some money, but this
Somebody
one is
owes
the one I
money,
wasn't
yeah.
sure. But really, kind of this area here is where we anticipate seeing them, and over here, these ones were a little more unanticipated. And then 500 to 600, again, Route 1, Reston, Centerville, kind of Springfieldish near TJ.
But that's
Excuse
one
me,
person.
Richard.
What we're seeing in the circle is that's one person there owing that kind of dues or fees.
So I'm going to escape out of here and I'll show you the more helpful documents, which is the actual Word version.
Can I say one more thing on the map? You know, the areas of the county that are less densely populated have fewer dots in them as well.
Of course.
Down at Fairfax Station and Mason Neck. And so there, you know, there's a correlation to your population density, I would think.
Indeed. And so this Word document that I'll send around as well is likely going to give you a little bit more insight into proportions, not just straight figures of where cards are blocked. So you can see we've got about 10,000 customer accounts that cannot use our services. They can't check out books because they owe more than $15. You had asked where those home branches might be. Top is Reston, got about 1,000 folks there, and then Fairfax, George, Kingstown, and Sherwood. And we pulled percentage-wise, if we've got 10,000 cards that are blocked, you can see that about 24 of those are from the 35 to 44 range. 21 of them are from under 18 years. And then the not applicable are the folks that have chosen not to provide their birth dates or birth years. Blocked accounts total about $500,000. So there's certainly a lot out there of materials that people still need to return, not just overdue fines. So if this committee were to make a recommendation to eliminate overdue fines, that would not eliminate the responsibility for people to bring back items which are due. It would just mean that people don't accrue overdue fines for things that are late. And I think that might be important if you were looking to have kind of a philosophical discussion and debate with colleagues, that there is still a responsibility that is put onto our card holders. They can't just keep items forever. They do have to bring them back, because lots of this number are items that are lost on people's account because they've had them too long. It's just the kind of penny ante nitpicky fines that go along with it.
And actually, Jessica, if I could, one thing that we've seen other systems do, I think Suzanne might have been talking about the hot picks are our two week quick pick loans. What some systems do is, in absence of late fees, they will reduce the period that they make something lost. So rather than, since they don't have late fees as the encouragement, for lack of a better word, to get the item in, the time between when it's overdue and declared lost would maybe shrink. And so the item, would then be charged to the customer, and that would create a block on their account. So all that would go into a place. Again, the encouragement, getting the material back versus really trying to punish anybody. Because once the material's back, we remove the fee once the material is checked back in. So it's really just about getting that back. So just to kind of tie it back to that other question about what we might see about hot picks is we may not see a change depending on other policies we could enact.
Exactly. We don't want to be punitive about this. We just want the stuff back so that people can use it. That's the whole process. Oh, here, this is the next slide I want to show you. So there's a lot of information here. I'm just going to skim some of it because I'll send it to you afterward. You can see that we also tried to identify where these folks might might live, not just zip code. So a little bit of Alexandria, a little bit of Fairfax, Springfield, Herndon. Your buddies up in Great Falls, although we had one very large circle up there, Sajatha, is not typically your area. It's more, more these top folks here. And then we've got the actual slides that we put into PowerPoint. So I will pull back up our original PowerPoint.
And I would just throw something else in there. Kingstown was on one of those top 5, I think, Jessica, that Doug had isolated.
Yes.
And I do think that, I don't know that that would normally be the case, that Kingstown would be there, but since Lorton's been closed for renovation, we have
yes.
moved a lot of accounts over to Kingstown because it is the next closest community library. So I think that Kingstown may be on that list due to, I'm guessing here, due to some crossover from Lorton being closed.
I think that sounds really reasonable. That's very likely what happened. Kingstown is not usually on our top hit list for this type of topic. One of the other questions that came up at your last meeting was, how much does it actually cost us as a library system to take in fines? And as I mentioned earlier in your meeting, we don't have a comprehensive response on that yet. We're still working on it. And it's mainly because it's so many portions of lots of people's time. How much time does our average circulation staff person in a branch take during their day to help people use the kiosk, or talk through why we have fines, or explain fines to somebody over the phone? What about our circulation managers who are having to override things and work with our system staff on folks that are blocked? We've got our system admin time. Chris Bartholomew, who was here for your last committee meeting, spends a whole heck of a lot of time working with people who have accounts that have been sent to the unique agency. You know, what percentage of that could be associated with this? And then I don't know if we talked about this last time, but as part of our county financial requirements, every single fine payment, as it is an individual transaction that needs to be handled individually in our procurement and payment process. So if you come in and pay 15 cents in fines, that takes us almost the exactly same amount of time to handle as somebody who comes in and pays $80 for lost items and processing fees. So that's certainly a bulk of time. In talking with our financial services folks, they think that approximately 2 FTE of staff time is dedicated just to handling library overdue fines and fees. So that's a lot of staff time that could be reallocated to support other things that we would like to do that, you know, have a more direct public service impact. Of course, we have 2 library IT staff members who a huge chunk of their time is driving between library branches to collect cash and change. So that time could also be realigned to actually, you know, do more IT focused services. There's things like gas to drive between locations, the service charges for Dunbar, who comes and picks it up from library admin, a portion of the contract for the kiosks that we have in place. And then, I mean, they're all going to add up to something that we're still working on. But really that intangible line at the bottom is the one I think has the most impact that negatively affects our library system. And that's how much people don't like fines. It's not even the fact that sometimes we know we deserve fines. Like, I have been overdue on things, I will pay my fines. It's okay, you make it happen. But it's just such a poor customer service experience. The process of associating a public good like the library, which you are already paying for with your taxes, and that feeling of like, oh, I owe money. Do I really want to go back? Do I really want to use this service again and potentially accrue more fines? That's a big part of it as well. Fran, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that from my experience as a branch manager. I think the impact on circulation staff is something important to communicate to trustees, in that it can be a very stressful interaction. And I think, you know, on the info side, we don't have that. Well, I think maybe now with the printers and stuff like that sort of changed that. But I always felt about that made the circ job a lot harder. And then, you know, when as a branch manager, you had to come out and resolve a situation because it had just kept escalating through no fault of the circulation staff. So I think that's a really important issue to consider in this evaluation of the fines.
I was going to ask the same question. You know how we get every month at our meeting, you have your incident report. I was that just before Fran said that, I was just wondering if I don't recall, like, obviously it doesn't have a line item that says dispute over fines, right? But I'm wondering whether, if Fran is saying that having been a branch manager, right? Like, I wonder if we were to sort of poll branch managers, what percentage of the bad interactions had to do with negotiating fines, dealing with somebody's stress when they realize it's $60 and that horrifying experience. And that's a lot of minutes too. Having been that mother who took out the stack of audiobooks and then forgot to return them, and you go, it's this many and it's $1 bazillion, and you go in there and it's horrifying. And even though you pay it, it does take a lot of minutes. You've spent 5 minutes, like you've spent a lot, 5 minutes sort of venting and being embarrassed and like hiding your head. And that poor person has to be listening to you while you're doing that instead of just paying your fee and moving on.
Well, we don't mind that part. We don't mind. We love customer interactions. That part's fine. It's the part where if you feel so ashamed that you have accrued those fines that you don't come back afterwards, that's the part where we really want to kind of nip this. That
I have been that. I just know that I have been that mother who said, I cannot keep up with this. So we're just going to have to figure something else out. We're listening to the radio. We can't do this anymore, you know, which is,
and we don't want that to happen. We want people to feel like their tax dollars are already well spent on our library system and you've already paid into it. Why is this additional layer in place if it's not in actuality getting the materials back in a timely manner? Liz?
Yes, just a couple of comments and maybe a question or two. In reference to the costs of taking in fines, a suggestion, if it's difficult to actually come up with something that is a defensible guesstimate, is you could take some of these line items and say for 30 days or 2 weeks, actually have people track how much of their time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you know, within that time frame, and then extract that and multiply it and say, you know, based on this pilot for 2 weeks or a month, we've extracted it to say that on an annual basis, this is how much this processing fines is costing us. That's just an idea in terms of trying to come up with a defensible kind of figure to help the staff on the cost. The other question I have is, you know, one of your charts, I was trying to look at it quickly, the ones with the little circles. I wanted to see how many of those people were outside of Fairfax County that were on that chart that they.
Well, let me pull up the Word document and say, because I think that actually has it easier to find.
Yeah, I did.
And the other question I have is on the 14 people who owe $500. Do we know where they are and who they are and what their situation is? Do we reach out to them and say, hello?
Hello. Okay, so on your first question, you can see that 92% of those blocked cards are within Fairfax County. So the little other over here shows outside of the state. We have some folks that have moved or that you know, gave us their new address before they left. But most of them are in Fairfax County and most of them are in Virginia. So it might be folks that live in Alexandria or Arlington or Loudoun or Prince William. So that was I'm sorry, what was your second question?
I don't remember.
Okay, we'll come.
Question was about the $500 people.
Yeah.
Oh, the $500 people.
I can speak to that a little bit. So, I mean, so we do have the material recovery service. And so, you know, essentially we really put that all on the material recovery service to follow up with the customer. They do regular notifications through their service. They are a library specific collection service, material recovery service. So they reach out at regular intervals and talk to the people, send letters and things like that. You know, if it's that much, then more than likely they probably checked out their maximum number of books. And, you know, if you assume that each book is anywhere from $4.95 to $12.95 or something like that, that's where you get to one of those amounts. So, you know, it could be that that was a parent checking out 50 board books. That was a parent checking out 50 picture books. That was somebody, you know, probably hitting their max number of checkouts and just we don't know what happened, but that'll be the extent of that. Will be the material recovery service takes over for us. They contact them, and then essentially the way that we're set up now with the audit recommendations is after 2 years of not collecting anything, then all those charges will be purged.
Right, so that $500 or greater is really within a 2-year, at least, 2-year
2 year
period.
window, yes.
Wow.
Suzanne. Oh, you're muted, Suzanne.
Sorry. Any idea how many people were cleared in the food for fines process?
Oh gosh, I don't have that on hand because we counted it more by the weight of food donated. I would be happy to follow up on that because I don't know.
I mean, I don't know if that would make any difference or not.
No, but we have it handy. I just don't have it off
Okay.
the top of my lips here.
Okay.
Fran, did you have a current question? I can't
Oh,
tell if your hand is still
400.
up.
Yeah, it's still up. A couple of things. I wondered, well, defining the fines within the One Fairfax equity issues, because the fines are not an equal impact on all of our users. That issue. The other thing that I'm curious about is, I guess in business, I don't have private sector experience, but the quote unquote cost of doing business a factor that I'm sure businesses have, which would be loss of materials, shoplifting, stuff like that, would be interesting to get some sort of number of that, which I think could possibly bolster our case that, we're looking at it in our library way, but if we looked at it in a business way, in terms of, most businesses have what they call a cost of doing business. Do we, or can we compare so that if that question comes up, like, well, you'll be taking a lot, maybe it doesn't seem like a lot of revenue that you'll be taking away, but if it's some sort of within a percentage of what businesses expect to lose, and we have that, and so you see what I'm saying? I don't think I need to.
I do, and part of that is we do have inventory that walks out the door, and that's separate from the fine process. And you may recall that we completed an inventory during the pandemic and found that we had, I don't know, I think it was like 100,000 items that weren't on the shelves that we thought were hanging out there because we'd never done one before. I'll have to look into that a little bit. I'm not sure that I've seen other libraries doing something similar, but I can poke around.
Or bookstores, maybe bookstore comparison. And then the other thing is, someone said to me that the kiosk costs $15,000. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. I don't know.
You mean the hard cost for them, the actual device? Yeah, but so we pay that. The cost of the actual device is a one-time cost. And then we pay a contract cost every year for the software service. And Robert, I don't know if you remember how much it is. It was a lot.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to guess.
Too much.
Be wrong. Yeah, but yeah,
Yes.
we've got the maintenance costs and the software costs and everything. It has always been the case with us that we spend a lot of money to collect money, and it's not a, we're not getting more than generally than what we're spending.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's
That's accurate.
Do you guys know how, I'm sorry, could you tell me, I'm sure you know, could you tell me what the kiosk does? What are all the things that the kiosk does?
Sure. I'm sorry. I'd be happy to go. So at this point in time, they collect fees. Again, this could be lost and damaged items. This could be any fees that we put into the customer in our ILS or our integrated library system. So anything that the customer gets from checking out materials or from having an account with us that checks out materials. We also collect money for the Friends of the Library book sales at each branch, except for George Mason. So all of those have a slot on the kiosk for that. We also collect any of our payments for printing and copying at our branches, and
Donations.
And yeah, donations they can do online. So there is an option for them to place donations online that they go to our to the library. And then we also have a button for them to get guest passes, but there's no charge for that. So for actual revenue collection, it's printing and copying, book sale, and fines and fees are the primary thing that we do at the kiosks.
Yeah,
And
we
we
no
do-
longer have cash registers or safes in our
Yeah.
facilities. We have kiosks instead.
So the big move to the kiosks is we'd had an audit several years ago, and we were, it was not great the way that we were doing it, and staff were very involved, and there were a lot of, gaps there that were not good. So we really wanted to get staff out of having to handle money or handle credit cards or anything at that point. And that's really when we made the move to the kiosks. And then over time, we've seen cash dissipate a little bit and credit increase. I know anecdotally, last time we looked for our fines and fees, generally most people are paying with credit cards.
I think more than 80% of this.
Oh yeah, it's huge. Copying and printing are really the ones where we still see coins and cash, just because I think that's kind of the mentality that people still have is I need to pay with coins for copying and printing. So that still kind of goes hand in hand. But yeah, those are the functions that we cover through the kiosk. And as Jessica mentioned, on the online portion, which is of course credit card only, they can do fines and fees and they can do donations. And those are the only two functions that they can do online.
And how frequently is money gathered from there? Is that?
So we strive to empty the kiosks at least once every 2 weeks, so that we don't have money sitting in there too much. I won't go into this, but this is under my wheelhouse. It's just a very convoluted, terrible process.
And we don't want to get too far into it as well, because it's guided by the county's Department of Finance principles and policies. We collect them on a basis that's required by the county.
Yeah, but yeah, roughly once every 2 weeks, we want to turn over the kiosks.
Okay.
Liz?
Yes, on the credit card, do we pay, when I go to a store, the store pays the credit card carrier,
Mhm.
I don't know what else to call it, they pay a fee. When we do the use credit cards to pay these fees, do we pay that administrative card processing fee back to the card, the person who issues the card?
Yeah, we do pay a processing fee. It's I will say this has come up, over time when we started collecting credit cards. I believe the library board made a decision when we first started collecting credit cards is that we would not pass along any of those fees to the customers. And when we look at the fees, it's negotiated by the county's contract with the credit card processors. They're very, very small, but yes, the library absorbs the cost of the processing fees.
Yep.
What we found when we've pulled data early on, especially, is that the ability to get people to pay those fees when they may not have, if we didn't have credit card, far outweighed what we have to pay in the fees. So it was to our benefit.
Part of the cost benefit analysis could include those fees as well, even
That's
if
an
they're
excellent
small.
point. I'll add that to our items to pull.
The last question is a sidebar question, Jessica, but
Mhm.
you mentioned that people could donate to the library cash or money.
Mhm.
I thought that had to go through the foundation. Are people able to donate directly to the library?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah, you can, if you wanted to donate to the library, you can donate through the library directly, through the foundation, through the friends groups. The kiosk and the website have direct donation buttons for the library. And then our website's got information about all of them. But yeah, they're all out there.
didn't know. Thank you.
You're welcome. Fran?
I was just gonna add some historical info for some of the new members that previously, once again, burden on circulation staff where they had to take money, drive in their car to the near bank and deposit it. And it was, I always thought it was horrible because, you're like, anyway.
And we do not.
And then there were
do not
robberies
do those.
of the delivery truck too, that people could get held up because then the money would get sent through the delivery truck to admin. So it was, yeah, there were bumps along the road with implementing of kiosks, but the removal of that stress, was great. So I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I just thought people should know a little bit about that because I think we see that some of the arcane behind the scene things that the library does are not always known, and it's good to know about it. Okay, that's it.
Exactly.
But even if we took away the fees, the kiosk would still be there to do other things for the library.
Yes, at this point, we do require them for other services. Okay, so this next slide is the part where I think you'll be happy, but there's definitely some debate and discussion to be had. So after your meeting last month, Sujata had brought up the question of what kind of authority does the library board alone have around charging of fines? And after consulting with the county attorney's office, the library board has the sole authority to set library specific policy, such as whether or not the library assesses overdue fines. The problem becomes that the library board does not have the sole authority over the library's budget, because the budget is finalized and approved by the Board of Supervisors, and they can set a certain level of revenue intake from the library. So if, for example, the library board decided to amend its policy around fines to eliminate staff assessing fines for overdue items, the county could still say, library, you need to make $600,000 in revenue. And we would go, okay, we don't know how to do that. Or that they could come back and say, okay, we're going to deduct 600,000 in funding for you to make up for the revenue that's being lost. I had the opportunity to talk with some colleagues in the Department of Management and Budget about this. So they are aware that the library board has sole authority over this policy. And they are prepared for whatever steps you all might need to take. And their request was that if we do move this forward, any kind of recommendation to the full library board to eliminate fines, that we try and align it with a specific county budget timeframe, such as mid-year or the start of a new fiscal year, so that it would be easier for them to track it against established financial timeline. I know that you all were anticipating talking about this topic at your September board retreats, so that you could then talk with the Board of Supervisors at your October joint meeting. So if you follow that timeline, and there is concurrence across the board about some kind of recommendation around eliminating fines of one type or another, there's a possibility that you could remove them as part of mid-year, which is, January-ish.
Okay.
So this was really interesting to get a concrete answer on this.
Yeah.
So that's what we found out so far. Any questions or comments on that one?
Interesting.
Liz?
So it sounds like the library is not on the hook to provide any specific revenue that they're counting on as part of their budget, because it's now the fees are all variable, et cetera, et cetera. Is that correct, Jessica?
So we base our budget off of past year's intake of fines and fees. So the library budget staff work with county budget staff and say, okay, last year we took in $600,000, but it's part of a pandemic, so we think we're not going to take in that much. How about we estimate this amount? But in a typical budget year, we are not dinged if we don't make the amount of revenue that's been associated with our agency. For example, we have always been going downward trend over this last decade, and we have almost never met our revenue intake projections, but that hasn't changed how much has come to us from the general funds. So in past years, that has not been a problem. I can't guarantee that it won't in future years, because it depends upon the Board of Supervisors and DMB staff, but that has not been the tact that has been taken with the library.
And so the part here that says any required revenue intake for the library is really zero in terms of required.
I would say that's debatable, because we have a budget. We are asked to make a good faith effort to bring in the amount of money that is identified there. We as an agency and a staff, and you all as a board, can't dictate the behavior and payment practices of the public. We can only make our best guesses and work towards that. The problem here is, it's not even a problem. The question here is, if the library board were to put in place a policy that said no more fines on overdue items, but the Board of Supervisors entirely disagreed with that. They've said yes, fines on overdue items. Then you would be setting yourself up for kind of a debate about, if they included revenue in there, where is that going to come from if there was an expectation we were going to fulfill it entirely? I don't really think that's the case here. I think you're going to get some strong support from your colleagues on the Board of Supervisors, but that's where I caution a little bit, that we have a budget we're supposed to fulfill. We have not been in trouble for the past years when we haven't met it, but we should also try and be as collaborative with the board of supervisors around these types of policy, if changes that affect the budget as possible.
Right, but right now, if I asked you what line item in the budget for this fiscal year do we have for revenue that we've quote unquote trying to achieve that? What is the amount that you currently have in the budget for that?
It's 601,000.
600?
601,000, yes. That's why I've been using that number, because it's, I don't remember exactly what line it is in there, but we have an amount, and every year our colleagues in Department of Management and Budget are very hopeful about how much we're going to bring in. Very hopeful. And we do not manage to make that figure.
But not surprised when that's not achieved.
Oh, exactly. Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
We're out of business.
Yeah. Fran, Sajatha, or Suzanne or Jane, oh, Jane, you dropped off my little picture list. Sorry here. Make sure you have hands up. Any comments or questions on this one?
Yeah,
Suzanne?
one thing that occurred to me was, would it be possible in those emails that go out reminding you of the automatic renewals to make a stronger indication or indicate on each item whether it was you've already done 3 renewals or there are other people waiting for the books? Because I think when
I think it has the number of renewals.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Okay,
Yes.
but if you could put something in there that was a little stronger about, there are 200 people waiting for this book, or something that would, trigger something in your brain to get them back more quickly. I know
Okay.
it works for me because I pay attention, and I
I
try
do-
to
yeah.
read those books that have a lot of holes first.
I do the same, and I track it from the website. So I pull up and you can see.
Yeah,
Mm.
and
How
I
many
do
people are
that too,
waiting?
but that's because we're library people. So Jatha, if you would think to do that, if you're
would never.
aware of,
I would never in 1,000 bazillion years. I mean, maybe now that my children are grown and I have a little bit more brain space for that, but when you have young children and you're just trying to keep your head above water and you have checked out all these books, the stacks of books, which you always do when you have small children, it wouldn't have occurred to me in 10 billion years to go and look. I mean, even with my ebooks now, my audiobooks now on Libby, it'll say so-and-so is waiting. So I try really hard to return that book as early as I can, to listen to it, to faithfully listen to it, because I know several people are waiting for that book. And I know what it feels like to be waiting on the hold line, right? But back then, I think that we should all be remembering that people are always, in general, trying to do their best. So I'm not sure that everybody comes with the same lens, but they're still trying to do their best. So,
Yeah.
But this, I have a question just for all of you. I haven't had a conversation about this specifically with John Faust yet. And he is in general a very wonderful person. So, I expect to have a very, salutary conversation with him about all of this, right? But any thoughts about that feeling about when you talk to your supervisor, just that in this group here, when you talk to your supervisor, what you think that conversation would be like about this issue, that we have the authority to make this policy, but the board may have a completely different idea with regard to this in a budget shortfall like they have right now, COVID relief, all of this stuff. And also if they're trying to weigh in their mind the increased interest in the library that COVID brought, like people really needing their libraries and missing their libraries when they closed. It brought a new attention, I think, to how much we loved our libraries. I think not having had them and you're used to them, like schools, like you just all of a sudden, all of this stuff, I hadn't thought about that before. Any thought here about how you think that would go and what we might, how we might have this conversation with the direction we're going? Because what we'd love to be able to do is make a pitch, right, that doesn't leave them thinking that they're going to be left in the lurch for the $601,000 or whatever,
I mean, I think as we have experienced in our 2 meetings on this can be a wide-ranging discussion, and there are a lot of really nice cherries for political people to pick. here and blow up, which would totally sidetrack us. So I think it would be helpful if this committee could crystallize the problem we're trying to solve. You know, I kind of came at this from the library's strategic plan. You know, we have a lot of people who aren't card holders. There's potential to bring a lot more people into the library. So in my mind, this is kind of in that lane of how do we bring more people in, I think with One Fairfax, this is kind of a mandate to remove barriers. So that's how I came at this. Board of Supervisors, you know, this might be because most of the supervisors, I hope all, but most of them are in favor of One Fairfax. So to me, there should not be a question about the Board of Supervisors understanding the logic of why our board wants to have this conversation and possibly vote. But they need to be prepared for pushback. You know, I think the political pushback, this might be a more difficult thing for them to maintain the One Fairfax perspective. I doubt it. I mean, I would be really surprised. But I think if we think about that proactively, it could just help make the conversation easier. But I think for all of us, you know, when you talk about messaging, even among our own board members, how do we equip ourselves to be able to explain this? Right now, it's just this huge cloud of so many reasons. And so I think, you know, and maybe this is where Erin comes in to help us organize some of the key points. But I think if we say, you know, here's the issue, here's our solution.
And I think that we really cannot underestimate the value of the return on investment, the financial argument, and then this cost of doing business argument. Those are persuasive because they are sort of non-denominational, right? They're just money. They're straight, you know, back and forth, right? And One Fairfax, I think, Jane, what I have found, and even if you know, there was, I mean, I won't get into it, but we can, there have been a lot, there's been a lot of evidence that the Board of Supervisors doesn't understand One Fairfax, and that it is lip service in a lot of ways, even though they might sort of, you know, in an ideal world, but it's
an aspiration, right?
There's plenty of evidence that there is absolutely none of that, no manifestation of that in reality on the ground, even if people have best intentions. So, and not a lack of awareness, right? So I totally agree with what you just said. Crystallize the problem we're trying to solve, get our key points, make it, and I think we need to make it an economic argument first and a moral argument second, because I think the moral, that closes the gap between the two. If you make the more economic argument first and the moral argument second, then it allows people who really don't understand One Fairfax to join that. And if you make this sort of the surrounding counties argument, that is also persuasive, because you really don't want to be the bad guy in this, right? You just don't. So anyway.
And I would add $600,000 in the term of the entire county budget is peanuts, right?
100%.
I mean, even as a percentage of our budget.
It is certainly not huge. And the amount we actually took in last year, as you saw, was like $200,000 or somewhere right around there. So yes, it is not mighty.
And I was going to say, it's not even what we're achieving. The 600,000 is not something we're delivering today. But I do think that we would be very unwise without eliminating fines without having the Board of Supervisors behind us.
Well,
Yeah.
but I think we have the
More
right
than
to
a
make
courtesy.
the recommendation first.
Yeah, exactly. But it's more than a courtesy, you know, in terms of getting their buy-in. But I don't know whether I should say anything to my supervisor that we are looking at it, the subcommittee seems to be on the side of eliminating, just without any further details. How does that strike her? I haven't done that conversation at all with her.
And I'd suggest you could certainly bring it up very lightly and very casually, but because this hasn't gone to the full library board yet, there's no final decision. You
Right.
all as a committee can make a recommendation, but you're going to need to make a policy change as a full board.
Right.
So, I'm sure you're going to have some additional debates from your colleagues on the rest of the board about this before it becomes enacted. So you might want to just let her know that this is something that's being reviewed and that it's a follow-up from prior budget years recommendations that got cut because of the pandemic. So this is just a reassessment at this point to see if it makes sense to move forward.
And again, I think in our overall messaging, both to the board, our library board, and the board of supervisors, is the fact that the how do I say it? The vehicles that we're using to provide fees is even shrinking as well, when more and more ebooks are being checked out or loaned out, or whatever you call that, signed out. So again, I think the whole messaging about all of this is that it's a shrinking figure over time in terms of the fees being collected. We wipe them out after the end of 2 years anyway, and we make a huge effort to get them. And we only have these numbers right now that are really outliers in that process. And, that the trend all around us is eliminated nationwide. I think there's a positive message that we can use, that taking everything into consideration, the cost of collecting, the impacts on the people of using the library. If they they're blocked, then they stop using it, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's a positive message that, again, how we frame it, even with our own board, we want to lead them down a pathway where they see the light, that it's easy for them to see why it doesn't make sense to continue.
It's just not worth it.
Yeah.
Hearing you say it that way. Yeah.
It's children who are the ones who are being discouraged from coming into the library because of their fines.
Yeah, but I was at the Centerville Library on Saturday as an election officer, and I saw firsthand the amount of people coming in and the amount of books or whatever items they're taking out with big bags. It's just
Definitely.
and
But
the joy of being able to come back into the library more than 30 minutes, etc.
Yeah.
It's just fabulous.
Something for us to think about, though, like with regard to our board and having a conversation with our board, is that the fact that it's children, and if you're talking about the moral idea that we as the library should be instilling, these values in children, that it's our responsibility to teach them responsibility, right? That is the argument. So in fact, the fact that it's children, to the people who oppose the idea of removing fines, makes it more imperative that we keep fines, because it is our responsibility. That's the counter argument, right? It's our responsibility to teach that responsibility to children. So the fact that they are the ones missing, like not returning the books, that's even more of a, that's the argument that we would be countering by removing fines. It's not necessarily our responsibility to teach responsibility, and that there are other ways to teach responsibility besides imposing fines.
Responsibility is bring back the books, and maybe we could use some of the money for some messaging on reminders, like big posters on reminders and things like that, about how much the library board needs the returns, the book returns, etc. Or maybe some articles in the newspapers or something. But I think we could do better on the messaging on returning books, rather than the messaging on, we're going to charge you a fee if you don't return the book.
And the real burden is on the parents. It's most children in this county do not walk to their neighborhood library. I
Right.
mean, it's a small percentage. And I think, you know, using the argument that you have to teach children when it's really the parents who are responsible. You know, and I can see a really great campaign to kick off no fines, you know, encouraging, you know, letting people know why we're doing this and getting everybody on board with it.
And a push for book returns.
I have my hand up.
Oh, God bless you, Fran.
I've had my hand up.
I'm
I've been
sorry, Fran.
quiet.
Such
I've
a
been
good
quiet,
engagement
quiet, I'm
person.
waiting, which is hard for me.
Fran, it's your turn, go.
I want to say with what Jane and Sujatha said that I think is really, really important. The financial issue is going to be important. I think we have a lot of the tug at your heartstrings stories, but I think we have to have some cold, and we're getting them. We're really getting there. The question that I have is, you know, how do we know the impact of fines? I mean, we can measure the shrinking revenue, and we can explain that. We can explain the cost of collecting revenue, et cetera. But I think the issue of you know, that separating out what is the impact on access of the fines and fees, that we really do have to come up with things there. And I think that's going to be the softer side of it. And maybe it will be the stories. Because I just don't know how you would measure that. Say, well, these people checked out a lot of books and then they had fines and then they quit coming. I don't think we have a way to measure that and say that. So I think the cost of business, you know, the financials, really important. The facts and figures, that's what makes us look business-like. And then here's what we know about the impact. So I think we've all been sort of saying the same things. And maybe it is time to move on to the next topic. I don't know.
Fran,
Yes.
I was just going to say, in the material that Jessica sent us in the beginning for our meeting, there was a TED Talk and some other data in there that showed the libraries that did away with fines actually had increased usage after that. And there might be some data in there that we could
That's good. That would be good. Yeah.
Yes, some of the original materials, and Jane, I saw your hand up as well, so you can be next in the queue. Some of the original materials I sent around showcased libraries that had been fine free for a while, and they were able to pull really specific data about increase in card holdership, increase in circulation per card holdership, and increase in door counts. And that was handy because that can help bolster an argument. The flip side of it is we've been charging fines on overdue materials for forever, and it has not changed people's practices. They continue to keep items late and get blocked cards and pay the fines, but it's not actually getting the materials back in a rapid manner, which is the whole premise of having fines, that you have a stick to prod people so that they bring stuff back. So yes, I agree with what all of you have said. Staff can certainly continue pulling together this information so you can talk about the economics of it first, and then the kind of tug at the heartstrings portion of it second, so that you're hitting the head and the heart as you're making these points to your board. Jane, your hand was up. Did you? I see it's down now, but I think
I hate to belabor this, but when Liz shared her anecdote about, you know, the kids leaving the library so excited, you know, in the schools, they don't charge fines. You know, if you lose or destroy something, then yeah, your parents get a note, like, you guys got to pay for this. But schools don't charge fines in their school libraries. But now that it's the end of the year, we are calling in all of our overdue books. And I have really been surprised when I talk to a kid about, hey, do you know, I show them the picture of the book they've got overdue, and I say, do you remember this book? Does this look familiar? Do you think this is something you could, you know, just go on a little hunt at home tonight and see if you have it? There is so many kids just express kind of this shame. They're very upset and embarrassed. And, you know, we send private emails. I have private conversations. This isn't in front of their whole class, like, you did something bad. But I think people have that internal sense of responsibility. So that surprised me, and it disappoints me to see kids getting upset about something like this. But I don't know. I feel like I really feel how people would be ashamed to come back to the library when they have the outstanding materials. So sorry to belabor this meeting, but
You're good. How about we do one more with Liz, and then I'll continue on with the slides, and then we can do some wrap up so we get you all out of here by 11:30. Liz?
Sorry, I should have lowered my hand.
Oh, no, Liz. Okay, next slide then. So the next one is just a little update. I know that you all had mentioned our surrounding jurisdictions. In the time between when you last met and now, I can confirm that Prince William has gone fine-free and did have a nice little marketing push around it. And just about a week and a half later, the Alexandria City Council approved them moving fine-free as well. So now in our region, it is just Fairfax and the City of Falls Church that are continuing to charge overdue fines. And the City of Falls Church is in these little trailers right now while they're doing a renovation. So this has not been maybe the top of their mind as they've only been doing curbside. So I think pretty soon it's going to be our whole region here. So I'll stop sharing my screen, and my recommendation is that you all set a next meeting for either later this month or very early in July, just so that you've got that on your calendars, and that at your next meeting, staff can draft you some talking points like you asked about those 2 layers of things, and that you make a decision about whether or not you want to recommend eliminating some fines, all fines, no fines, so that you can move it forward as a consideration item to your colleagues at the July meeting. And then you can have it as an action item for discussion at your board retreat in September. And that'll give you the timeline you're looking for in advance of the board supervisor meeting.
Awesome.
Does that sound good?
Mhm.
Okay. So Sujatha, when would you like to meet next? I know that folks are probably getting excited about like a 4th of July trip or things like that. So
So
Is
do
there-
you guys want to try to meet later in the month, or do you want to try to meet? Do you want to try to get in early next month before our meeting is on the 14th, our full
yes,
board
your
meeting?
meeting's on the 14th.
So you tell me what you prefer if we try to look for a date.
I like June.
You like June? How about you guys, Fran?
I do too, so that we have some time to rework
Okay.
things before the meeting if necessary.
Okay.
Jean, are you still available in the mornings?
Yes, although after the 21st, I'm free all day.
Got it.
Okay.
How does the afternoon of Tuesday, the 29th look for folks?
Works for me.
Well, it's the closing thing of ALA at 1, which is Barack Obama.
It
So-
is. That's why I was thinking like 3.
So like, not then.
Okay, fine.
After that, I mean,
That's not
after
good.
that,
That's
but I
not good.
gotta see Barack.
How about the afternoon of Thursday, July 1st?
July 1st.
Good for
Perfect.
me.
Sound good? Okay.
Hang on,
Works for me.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Do you have a time in mind?
2 or 3?
How about 2?
2. Thursday, July 1st at 2 p.m. Look at us getting things on the calendar. And I forgot that he was ending that. I have the last full day on Mondays blocked off on my calendar, but I don't have Tuesday blocked off. I'm gonna have to go and do that now. Oh,
It's the only thing, I think. And it's, okay, this is stupid, but I have a dentist appointment at 11, and then on the schedule it says the Barack Obama or closing ceremony at 12. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I can make it. And then you read it, it's Central Time. So it's
Oh.
actually 1 o'clock for us. I hate that. It's like I put all the stuff in my calendar, and then I looked at, wait a minute, Central Time.
yep, Chicago time.
I had to do
Chicago time.
math. and-
Yes.
We said 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock Eastern time, Thursday, July 1st.
Eastern Time.
Eastern time.
Eastern Daylight Savings Time. Right, yeah.
Indeed.
2 p.m. Perfect.
Okay, well then, I will send around the 2 PowerPoints you saw today, as well as the Word doc that's got the detailed information with the heat mapping for different blocked card accounts. And you can look forward to, in advance of your July 1st meeting, some talking points for your edits and discussion at your next meeting.
Can you,
Awesome.
Jessica, could you also in that email write in what you said that I would have to do, like the yeti consideration item, blah, 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 that date,
Yep,
etc.
yep.
Because I don't even know what to do. So just tell me what to do.
Yes,
that
I will happily do that. I'll send you some separate specifics.
Thank you. Thank you
You're
very much.
welcome.
I appreciate it very much.
Okay, it is all yours to close out the meeting if you'd like to.
Okay, so can somebody move to adjourn? Is that what has to happen?
Oh, no, in a
Somebody-
committee meeting, you can just tell us that we're done.
Oh, lovely. We're
You get all the
adjourned. Thank
power.
you guys. I appreciate that so much.
What
Thank you.
power? What
Good meeting,
power?
Sujatha.
Power. I'm drunk with it. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye all.
Stay cool this
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, bye, everybody.